Okay. I completely forgot we had you on the line today. I was sitting here waiting for you to show up on the screen, sorry. This is agenda 22-14 of the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada, present in Carson City.
Dave Noble.
And on the line.
Rebecca Wagner.
And I'm Lynn Birch on Las Vegas. Item 1A is time for comments from the general public on topics that pertain to items on this agenda. Are there any members of the public wish to make a statement in Carson City?
No one is coming forward.
Anyone in Las Vegas? Mr. Fazio? Mr. Fazio? Let me read my thing here. The Commission welcomes comment from all persons. However, please recognize the Commission receives evidence through a formal process. The hearings or investigations for all matters we discuss in this agenda have already been conducted, and draft orders or memoranda have been prepared on the basis of the record created at the hearing or on the final results of staff's investigations. The Commission appreciates any feedback from the public. The comments made today cannot be treated as formal evidence. Members of the public desiring to comment, please state your name. Comments shall only address topics that are relevant to or within the authority of the Commission. Speakers shall not repeat prior comments made during this agenda, and comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. The speakers allotted 3 minutes shall not be transferred to another. And when the allotted 3 minutes has ended, each individual must stop speaking. Mr. Fazio.
Angel Fazio. The ratepayers have been forced to subsidize everything from solar light bulbs to refrigerator rebates. Now those with solar expect us to carry them to this choice. I don't think so. Their solar is only effective during sunny days, and then at night they use energy from NVE, and think we should graciously subsidize them. If they want to use solar, and when it's not sufficient, they rely upon NVE SP, then they should pay for that access. They are in fact a new class, and as such, they should be required to pay their fair share. NVE should do the cost survey and execute those costs to the net metering companies. As it stands right now, the sales pitch garbage the solar companies are spewing are fraught with lies and pie-in-the-sky, unachievable promises. Over the weekend, I was contacted by Jonathan Friedrich as he was talking to a solar company about installing same. Not a lease, but a full outright purchase. By the time the call was over, Jonathan told the guy, thanks, but no thanks, and the sales rep had no rebuttals to my statements. These solar companies have no oversight, and now they want their customers excluded from access fees. The only in the public interest answer is a net metering class. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fazio. That's all the cards in Las Vegas. Moving to item 2A, it's docket 14-07007 and 14-07008. They are Nevada Power Companies and Sierra Pacific Power Companies. Request for approval of their 2014 annual demand side management update report that relates to their respective action plans for 2013 to 2032 or 2014 to 2033, depending on respectively between Nevada Power and Sierra Pacific Power. We have a stipulation in front of you that addresses the programs, modifies the programs to some extent, and the language of it. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer the questions.
To pay for the long distance package.
I have none.
Commissioner Ryder, did you have
I
any
have
questions?
none.
Okay.
Nope.
Alrighty then, I would move we accept the stipulation, grant the applications as modified by the stipulation, and issue the order.
Second.
Concur.
Item 2B is brought to us by Commissioner Noble.
Item 2B is docket number 14-05004, which is the application of Nevada Power Company doing business as NV Energy for authority to increase its annual revenue requirement for general rates charged to all classes of electric customers and for relief properly related thereto. And docket number 14-05005, which is the petition of Sierra Pacific Power Company doing business as NV Energy for cost recovery of the Advanced Service Delivery Project and Nevada Dynamic Pricing Trial pursuant to the order issued in docket numbers 13-06002, 13-06003, and 13-06004. There was a petition for reconsideration filed by the Kroger Company And you have before you a draft order recommending granting the petition for reconsideration and affirming the order issued on October 15th. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
I don't either.
And I would move that we grant the petition for reconsideration of the Kroger Company and affirm the order issued on October 15th, 2014, and issue the appropriate order.
Second,
Concur.
item 2C is brought to us by Commissioner Noble.
Item 2C is docket number 14-06001. That is Anna Robles Smith versus Nevada Power Company doing business as NV Energy. The complaint regarding the calculation of back billing charges. Ms. Robles Smith filed a petition for reconsideration. You have before you a draft order recommending that the petition for reconsideration or rehearing be denied. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments you might have.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
Neither do I.
And I would move that we deny the petition and issue the appropriate order.
Second,
Concur.
item 2D is brought to us by Commissioner Noble. Commissioner Noble?
Item 2D is docket number 14-06009. That is the investigation regarding whether separate customer classes of service for net metering customers should be established. You have before you a proposed order recommending approval of the report and adoption of the recommendations therein. I do have one proposed change to the report. It's on the last page, page 14, the very last sentence. It states the Commission finds that in the absence of specific statutory direction, it is inappropriate to use rate design to further assist such customers at the expense of other ratepayers. I think that sentence is misplaced. I've read it over a few more times, and even though it was my drafting, I find it confusing, especially considering 704.110 sub 14 sub B authorized the utility to implement a different rate for low-income customers, and I think that last sentence is a bit confusing given the discussion in the previous, in that last paragraph. So I would recommend deleting that last sentence, and then in footnote 8, which starts out, these include weatherization and monetary programs. After the word monetary, I would recommend inserting the word assistance. So it would read, these include weatherization and monetary assistance programs. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments you might have on the draft report or draft order.
Commissioner Markey?
Thank you, Chairman. I was kind of hoping to have more information about the entire concept of creating a net metering class. It seems like just through the process, the only real discussion was at a workshop in August, and I was hoping for a little bit more substance, and now seeing the proposed report, it raises a bunch of questions with regard to a cost of service study. How long does it take to do a new one? I know Ms. Walsh seemed to be able to make modifications to the one that she utilized to make her proposals at the workshop. But how long does it take? How much does it cost? Who determines the input? Will this be the cost of service study used for the Sierra Pacific rate case? Or will there have to be another one run? Will those be the most recent results? Who bears that cost if we're doing two of them? And then the biggest issue is whether there'll be any legislative action that clarifies any of the ambiguities that have been raised with respect to the creating a new class. So I just recommend maybe, unless there is some reason to rush through this, maybe take some time to get more color or information around what will a cost of service study do. The last thing, I don't know where this would come back. Will it be vetted in the docket that it comes in? Where does it need to be filed? I just think we could have some more information around it. So if we're going to rely on the cost of service study that's filed outside of a rate case, what does that mean? So that's, I was just hoping maybe we could get a little more information on that.
Well, let me go ahead and jump in, so Commissioner Noble, you can kind of address both Ms. Wagner, Commissioner Wagner's and my questions. When I was looking through it, I probably am more in favor of a cost of service study than it appears Commissioner Wagner is, because I do think that this is a question we need to sort of have more updated information for. But I still have the same kind of question she has. How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? But my wrinkle on that issue is I'm wondering if we always have the company doing a cost of service study, and I had an open investigation a couple of years ago about marginal cost. Is this still appropriate? Should we look at sort of embedded cost of service studies? And I think it all came back into marginal cost, continuing to do marginal cost. But I think that given that we have seen the marginal cost of service study, nobody else does a marginal cost of service study except the company. It's very labor intensive. Nobody seems to really have the time or the resources to do it. And I think we might have the opportunity now to actually maybe the time and possibly the resources to bring in somebody that is sort of an independent third party to do a marginal cost of service study using the company's data. I don't know how much time that's going to take. I don't know what the cost would be. But I do think there's some value, particularly if we're going to have this kind of big policy question discussed to deal with as separate rate class issues. It might not be a bad idea. And it takes the company off the hot seat to some extent about their cost of service study if we have an independent person do it. So I throw that out, see what you guys think. But I think, like as Commissioner Wagner knows, we don't have, I'm not sure how much that is going to cost, who the people are going to do it. I would suspect we'd ask the company to do an RFP to see who that would be. But it would be nice to know the length of time that would take and the cost associated with that. So Commissioner Noble, your thoughts?
With regards to having an independent third party do it, is that something that then you'd want the commission to just undertake the cost of service study with NV Energy providing the data, or is it still having NV Energy conduct it, but using the resources of an independent third party that would be funded by somebody besides NV Energy?
Well, I think that's one of the questions that I don't have the answer to. I mean, when I started thinking about this possibility, I thought, well, if we have somebody else do it besides the company, I'm not sure we have in-house resources sufficient to do a cost of service study. And we haven't really, I've been doing this for 22 years before the commission, and I haven't seen anybody in that 22 years besides the company do a cost of service study. And given the policy questions that are going to be attended to maybe this cost of service study we're talking with regard to net metering, it might just give everybody a break to say, okay, an independent person's coming in using the company's data to conduct the study. I would think that the best possible world would be something similar to E3, where we sort of like funded it to ourselves, but I don't think we have the funds to do it. I think we could order the company to do an RFP and then find out what the cost is, and then it would be placed into rates. But I don't have any good answers right now, and that's part of my problem.
What I can do then, if both of you are amenable to it, is take this back. I'll review the questions that were the transcript from, or the audio tape from today, put together a procedural order and hold another workshop to get those answers, and then bring this back at a later agenda within the next probably 8 weeks or so, if that's all right.
I think that's great.
I think that that's a great path, because I just, I don't know enough about cost of service studies that I don't know if we're, walking into something that is absolutely absurd, or does this make sense? And one thing I would like to add to that is, how do we make sure that the inputs are and evaluation is transparent? So that might be something to consider. How will the cost of service study be vetted? And will it be the same one that would be used in the upcoming Sierra filing? So if we could just get more clarity around it, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. Item 2E is brought to us by Section is brought to us pursuant to Section 252 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 and can be voted upon without any further discussion unless any commissioner has questions or comments.
No, thank you.
I have none.
Hearing no requests, I move that we grant the joint petition, approve the agreement, and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 3A is brought to us by Hearing Officer Lamalho. Mr. Lamalho?
Item 3A is docket number 12-07024, the investigation and rulemaking regarding the annual assessment of telecommunication revenues. Before you is a draft proposed regulation and a list of accessible telecommunication services that would be adopted pursuant to that proposed regulation.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
I have none.
I would move we approve the hearing officer's proposed order as filed, adopt the proposed regulation as a temporary regulation, adopt the list of revenue types for calculation of annual assessments for telecommunications providers pursuant to NRS 704.033, and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 3B is brought to us by Hearing Officer Lamalho.
Item 3B are the consolidated dockets, the first one being 13-09004, the application of Tuscany Services LLC for authority to operate as a competitive supplier of telecommunications service within the state of Nevada. And the second docket is 14-10012, the application of Tuscany Services LLC to voluntarily discontinue telecommunication service in Nevada. Staff and Tuscany did arrive at a stipulation that is attached to the draft order that would resolve both dockets and allow Tuscany to continue service till the end of this year and then discontinue service at the end of the year. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
I have none.
I move we approve the hearing officer's proposed order as filed, accept the stipulation, grant the applications as modified by the stipulation, issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 3C is brought to us by Hearing Officer Lamalho. Mr. Lamalho?
Item 3C is docket number 13-06017, the rulemaking to address cost of service studies, issues authorized for rulemaking in Assembly Bill 436, and other matters related to water and wastewater utilities. Attached to the proposed order is a draft regulation which implements the provisions of Assembly Bill 436 and institutes a process for the filing of cost of service studies for water and wastewater utilities.
Any questions or comments?
I have none.
I have none.
I would move that we approve the hearing officer's proposed order as filed, adopt as permanent the proposed regulation, and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 3D is brought to us by Hearing Officer Lamalho. You've been busy.
I have. Item 3D is the consolidated dockets. There's three of them. The first is 13-09023, the complaint of Bonanza LV Holdings LLC, Boulder LV Holdings LLC, Yo 11 LLC, Charleston Suites LLC, Deco LV Holdings LLC, Craig LV Holdings LLC, Casa LV Holdings LLC, Paradise LV Holdings LLC, Sahara LV Holdings LLC, St. Louis LV Holdings LLC, Swenson LV Holdings LLC, Twain DE LLC, Hopover LLC, and Fremont LV Holdings LLC versus Nevada Power Company, DBA NV Energy concerning customer class identification, customer class billing, and deposit issues. The second docket is 13-10012. Again, a complaint of Bonanza Springs Suites LLC, Boulder Manor Suites LLC, Super Suites LLC, Casa Suites LLC, Checkmate Suites LLC, Coliseum Suites LLC, Craig Suites LLC, Paradise Suites LLC, Sahara Suites LLC, St. Louis Suites LLC, and DC Suites LLC versus Nevada Power Company, DBA NV Energy concerning customer class identification, customer class billing, and refunds for billing errors. The final docket is another complaint one being Ovation MM Inc. and its affiliated companies, Stephanie Apartments, SPE1 LLC, Asset LA LLC, Wigwam Parvin LP, Duck Creek Apartments LLC, BR Ovation LP, Pacific Willows LLC, Spring Mountain Apartments 1 LP, Thunder Road Development LLC, and Russell Apartments LLC versus Nevada Power Company, DBA NV Energy, concerning current billing practices and petition for declaratory relief. Before you is a draft order. I did review the exceptions and answers to exceptions and propose revisions to the proposed order, and that was filed on November 17th.
Any questions or comments?
Chairman, I do. For Mr. Lenovo, I guess I was struck by the amount of exceptions and the revision to the order, didn't take many of those into account. I'm just wondering if we have a little more time with it, maybe we can tighten up the order, or do we, if you're comfortable with the way it is, I understand that, but I also think that if there seems to be a lot of loose ends out there. So I'm just throwing that out for consideration if there's any appetite to just defer this to the next agenda and make sure that we have everything covered. I'm just recognizing that Mr. Lenovo has to do a tremendous amount of work in a short amount of time with the when the exceptions and answers come in. So just food for thought.
This was quite an undertaking, Mr. Mulholland. You had an awful lot of different stuff. And I think the language of your order is, I think, distills some very complex problems in very short order. The concern that I have is I'm concerned about the acceptance of the exception you have in the revised schedule. When I look at Rule 2, Section K3, to me, unless there's some other rule that would supplement that, to me, they get 6 months and that's it. So I'm a little concerned about that. I understand that the company kind of decided not to true it up and kind of leave this kind of open and continuing given the pendency of the action. And I understand that and I appreciate their willingness to do that. But I am a little concerned because it seems to me that we have been very careful, I think, to some extent, looking at just the language and trying to interpret the language of specific tariff provisions. And this specific tariff provision basically to me says 6 months, but we're going way past 6 months. So I guess I'm supporting Commissioner Wagner's thought here to maybe go back and take another look at that. There was an awful lot of exceptions to this. You had a really short time frame to deal with them, and it might not hurt. It might be very helpful, I think, if you had an opportunity to go back and just kind of have a little more time. So do you have any thoughts about that, Commissioner, Hearing Officer Mulholland?
Actually, Chairman, before he
I'm sorry,
weighs in,
Commissioner, go ahead.
Okay. I followed this issue while this was going on because it ended up being an issue in the general rate case and whether or not to approve the stipulation. So I dove into the details back in September. And in my review of the comment or the filings that were made after the draft order were issued are simply reiterating those same arguments that were before the hearing officer during the pendency of this process. So I don't think there's anything new or different that needs to be said, especially looking at the comments filed by Nevada Power and staff who essentially agree with the hearing officer's proposed language. And then with regards to the Rule 2K3, I think we have to be careful too that I think NV Energy could have made these complainants pay that money, but instead decided to hold off on that while the pendency of this proceeding went forward. If there was ultimately a different outcome from what they would have been, had to have paid, according to Nevada Power, they would have had to have paid all that money, and then it would have been reimbursed at that point. So I wouldn't want to hold it against one or more parties for essentially freezing the rate structure while the commission reviewed this. So that's just my 2 cents with regards to the 6 months. I think it would have a perverse disincentive for parties to be amenable to maintaining the status quo during a pendency of a hearing that could have unintended consequences for one or another party during the interim. So that's my input.
Well, and I guess I understand your position, and I don't disagree with it. I just, it's very clear that the focus by all the parties in the case and this order is looking at specific tariff language. And unfortunately for Bonanza and the parties here, I'm not gonna go through the whole list of them. Some are more unfortunate than others associated with how the meeting structure has changed the way the tariff is reviewed. I frankly have a little bit of a concern about the use of the term permanent, because I think, I'm not sure I've got the right answer, and I think our hearing officer Lomoho has come up with as good an argument as anybody else, but I do think that this is a really tough one. And since we were so focused on just language of tariffs, and that worked and in every single instance, that worked to the complainant's disadvantage, that on the one occasion where we actually have a tariff language that says 6 months, that we're reaching outside of the tariff to do something different. And I guess I'm a little concerned about that. And I throw that out there because it just seemed to me that we were so focused on tariff language until we got to this point. But I do agree that there are some definite equities in having the company feel they have the ability to say, let's help things in status quo until the commission issues a decision. So I'm very torn on it. But the hearing officer, you've been living with this thing, so what are your thoughts?
There are not statutory or regulatory timeframes on these complaints, so if it were the recommendation of the commission to hold off on this and take it up at a subsequent agenda, I could do that and take a look again at the exception and evaluate if any further changes were needed. I can do that.
Do you think that provides value to you? I mean, if Commissioner Noble said he'd been looking at it, he thinks that basically it's, I mean, is it something that you would, I guess I'm asking for your opinion whether or not you think you would like additional time.
There was a short amount of time to look at the exceptions, and I did look at them, and I was and am comfortable with the draft order as proposed. However, it doesn't hurt to take another step back, take another look at them. So I'm comfortable either way. It doesn't hurt to be more careful and take more time.
Chairman, why don't we just defer this to the next agenda? I think more time is always good. And I'll go through it again too. I mean, everybody will go through it again. That way we can be more focused on this one item.
Okay.
I think more time can't hurt, is what I'm trying to say.
Gotcha. Okay, let's go ahead and defer item 3D then. Okay, item 3E is brought to us by Hearing Officer Lomoho.
Item 3E is the rulemaking to reflect changes to the Economic Development Electric Rate Rider Program set forth in Assembly Bill 1 of the 28th, 2014 special session of the Nevada Legislature. Before you is a proposed temporary regulation that revises the previous Economic Development Electric Rate Rider Program to bring it into compliance with Assembly Bill 1.
Any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
I have none.
I would move we approve the hearing officer's proposed order as filed, adopt the proposed regulation as a temporary regulation, and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Items 4A and 4B are brought to us by General Counsel and can be voted on without any further discussion unless any commissioner wants to pull one up, and item now for further consideration.
No, thank you.
I have none.
Okay. I move that the commission accept the recommendations contained in general counsel's briefing memos regarding items 4A and 4B and issue the appropriate orders.
Second?
Concur.
Items 5A, 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E, 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, and 7E are brought to us by Rectory Operations staff and can be voted on without further comment unless any commissioner wants to pull one out for further consideration.
No, thank you.
I have none.
I would again move that the commission accept the recommendations contained in staff's briefing memos regarding items 5A, 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E, 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, and 7E and issue the appropriate orders.
Second?
Concur.
Item 8A is time for comments from the general public on any topic that is jurisdictional to the commission. Is there anyone in Carson City?
No one is coming forward.
Okay, and Mr. Fazio in Las Vegas.
We're having solar and other renewables shoved down our throats. We keep hearing about how productive replacing fossil fuels and reduce our energy bills. Okay, enough of the fantasy. Let's look at our version of Solandra, aka Ivanpah Solar Facility. This opened up in February with operators saying it would produce enough electricity to power a city of 140,000 homes. So far, the plant is producing half of its expected annual output for 2014, according to calculations by the California Energy Commission. Although the agency still says the project remains in good standing, Caitlin Meese, an analyst at research firm Ventec Energy, said its early production figures do not paint a strong picture for solar thermal technology. Operators initially expected to need steam from gas-powered boilers for an hour a day during startup. After operations began, they discovered they needed an average of 4.5 hours. State legislators in August approved the plant's request to increase the natural gas it's allowed to burn by 60%. Additional natural gas could also be needed to operate boilers when clouds thicken or to maintain the output at the end of the day and extend the capability. PUC sent a letter to the EPA regarding fulfilling energy reduction standards. What about the probable CO2 from the Ivanpah solar system? It seems that Bright Source Energy, the company operating the plant, is petitioning the California government requesting permission to burn more natural gas and to emit 94,749 more tons of CO2 per year. That's the equivalent of emissions from 16,500 automobiles. My question to you, Commissioner, are these emissions going to honor the border and remain in California? Is Nevada going to have to mitigate these also? Seems to me that Nevada should be having a say in this request to burn more gas, along with being fully compensated to deal with these emissions, as residents should not shoulder this in any way whatsoever, nor should what happens in California that impacts Nevada. Nevada should be an active participant in decisions with this type of effect upon our state. So much for removal of our dependence upon gas, fossil fuels, and coal.
Thank you, Mr. Fazio. That was all the cards for Las Vegas. We're adjourned.